heard about the impact 9/11 had on the people on the ground, but what about how it affected the world of culture? From film to painting to music and literature, the September 11th attacks had a monumental influence on art, and it's only one that we're beginning to understand. Maya Margit takes a look.
A dark day in history that changed everything and marked a turning point for the world of art as well. The National September 11 Memorial Museum is honoring the 15th anniversary of 9/11 with its first ever art exhibit. The show, called Rendering the Unthinkable, features the works of 13 local artists.
We thought there needs to be another way in to remembering, and we realized that art is another way in. It gives you that immediacy of the emotional truth of that moment, and you see through another person's eyes and through their artistic practice how they struggled with the very same emotions that all of us felt.
From paintings and sculptures to works on paper and video, each piece of art in the New York show represents an artist's reaction to the attacks, like Gustavo Bonevardi's Falling, which was inspired by a memory he had from September 11th.
That image of pages floating in space was what everyone saw who was down there as the towers were burning all around, this beautiful, crystal clear blue sky, and these pages just like lyrically floating in space, and it was actually quite beautiful.
But September 11th arguably had the greatest impact on film. The Twin Towers were edited out of scenes of films released shortly after the event, including the first Spider-Man movie, which originally released a trailer with the towers still intact. Several films also tackled 9/11 head-on, including the ambitious 11 minutes, 9 seconds, 1 image, a 2002 short made up of 11 segments from 11 directors all around the world. For many, United 93 is the most memorable film on 9/11. A real-time account of events on board one of the planes hijacked that day, the film shows how passengers tackled the perpetrators and foiled the terrorist plot. United Airlines Flight 93 crashed into an open field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania.
And it was greeted very, very positively, because I think audiences came to this film and saw it for what it is, a responsible, powerful exploration of what 9/11 means.
But even so, some speculate that the true impact of 9/11 on art won't crystallize for a number of decades, long after the dust finally settles.
And we're joined now in studio by I-24 News correspondent Maya Margit. Good afternoon to you, Maya. So we just saw your report, and all I can think about after watching that is how can an artist possibly capture all that is 9/11?
It's quite difficult, especially since it hasn't happened that long ago. 15 years may seem like a long time, but many critics say actually that to get the necessary perspective to produce a work of art that's really significant, you need more time, you need more years. So another problem facing artists is how do you do something about 9/11 without trivializing it, without turning it into some form of entertainment?
Right.
So, you know, another thing that's interesting to mention is that the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq didn't really produce a counterculture scene like we saw in the 60s with the Vietnam War.
Right.
It's an interesting point to make, you know, maybe it's just a different era.
And, you know, you mentioned visual art and film, but what about music, for instance? What impacts has it had there?
What was interesting is that right after 9/11, a number of songs, 165 songs to be exact, were banned from radio stations across America.
I remember that, and I remember thinking, really?
Yeah.
I mean, it was a shock.
Their lyrics were considered to be questionable, quote unquote. You know, AC/DC's Highway to Hell, even Bob Dylan's Knocking on Heaven's Door were all banned for a period of time right after the attacks because it was seen as a sensitive time. But what's interesting in terms of music is that the impact was very much profound in country music, where we saw like huge displays of patriotism and American flags fluttering everywhere.
Yeah.
A prime example of this is Toby Keith, a famous country singer. In his song, Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue, you know, it's just basically him waving the flag. His guitar is covered in an American flag, and it was really popular. It reached the top of the Billboard 100 hot country songs.
Yeah.
On the other side of the spectrum, people who were more opposed to the Iraq War that came soon after and all these things, well, you have the Dixie Chicks. The Dixie Chicks were really, really popular 15 years ago. And then one day during a concert in London, the singer Natalie Maines said, quote unquote, I'll just quote you it, "Just so you know, we're on the good side with y'all. We do not want this war, this violence, and we're ashamed that the President of the United States is from Texas."
Yeah, I remember that too.
That was a huge controversy. So many people boycotted these the Dixie Chicks. They basically never regained their former popularity after that.
And what other kind of controversies were there that received like negative publicity?
There were many artists who were very impressed with the visuals coming out of 9/11. So one of the most famous artists in the world, Damien Hirst, he basically said that the attacks were visually stunning, quote unquote, and that he said that he has to give it to the terrorists because they produced something that nobody else has been able to do before in the history.
Oh wow, that's really out there.
It's absolutely insane. And of course, there's this famous iconic image by Thomas Hupker, which we have here, I believe. It's basically an image of New Yorkers sitting in a Brooklyn park, just enjoying a chat in the sun, while you see, like, behind them, the World Trade Center's. Yeah.
Pretty controversial, I say. Well, that is all the time we have, but Maya, thank you so much for this really interesting look at art to finish this special where we've really been analyzing terrorism and politics. It's nice to have kind of a look at how it's impacted the art world, so thank you so much for that. And that's all for today's special. Join us again tomorrow, same place, same time, for your dose of the Daily Beat. Have a great day.